cool. But one of the things that we've talked about is networking and what that looks like to network one on one. Some of those people who are in the networking group have been able to do some pitching, cold outreaches, things of that nature. But when we think about networking, I think the toughest thing is like, how do you connect and how do you pitch yourself to others? Because that can be something that is intimidating. It can be overwhelming, and it can be something where you kind of like, you just don't know what to say. So I'm curious to know, out of this group, who feels very comfortable? If you feel very comfortable, let's get a reaction of like a thumbs up. If you feel mildly comfortable, let's get a reaction of just like a hand clap. And then if you feel like, yeah, right, this is a struggle, just put a laughing emoji. Okay, okay, we got the milds. Okay, milds, thumbs up, some good ones. Cool. Nobody, no laughing emoji. Oh, okay, we see it. I see some laughing emojis. Cool. All right. So let's talk about a few of you who said that you feel like you're in a really good space. Bella, I'm going to pick on you because I saw your thumb go up for that. What do you think you found that has been really helpful for you to successfully network?
I just personally feel like I'm also like really talkative already. And like the thing that I usually do in networking is just like be myself and more like just ask them the questions that allows them to like express their experience more. And in returns, I just feel like the more you give someone else opportunity to talk about themselves, like the more they tend to be more comfortable like opening up to you and then from there like I just continue like whatever like the purpose of that networking.
Definitely. Oh, that's a good one. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Being yourself, that's why we talked about that last week, but then also letting them express themselves. People love to talk about themselves. If someone says they don't, you just got to get them in the right space. Another thing that I want to ask for those people who put the claps in the middle, what are some of the things that you struggle with? People want to start to share. Let's start with Will. Will, what would you say is something that you struggle with when networking?
I'm not like the most talkative person too. So like it's especially when we're talking about professional stuff, like career things, I guess it's just hard for me to know exactly what to say. So like yeah, like I might just be like, I'm Will. I study film at DePaul, but
No,
I guess I'm just not the best like when it comes to talking about career stuff in general. Like I don't know.
no, that makes sense. I feel like a lot of people would have that same sentiment, and even that's where I definitely started. Julie, what would you say is some stuff that you struggle with when networking?
I would say it's like the imposter syndrome. So like when I network with someone, like I would tend to feel like I'm not good enough to network with that person. So I would say it's like, yeah, it's the imposter syndrome.
And then let's go with Karina. What would you say are some things that you also might be struggling with?
I would say as far as like networking, I guess it kind of be like just thinking ahead already, like, oh, maybe my skills aren't good enough, or like, obviously interviewing I'm not good at either. So it's hard for me to really like, I don't know, think about what I want to say when I do get the chance. So yeah, I guess just trying to get my skills across or what I think I'm good at.
I would say, Will, were you going to add something?
I
Sorry.
was just gonna say that's kind of what I was trying to say.
Brett, what would you say as well?
I think that what other people were saying kind of touched on the same thing, especially what Julie said about like the imposter syndrome. Like kind of trying to sell yourself can be awkward sometimes. Trying to like really formulate exactly what you are and like a quick little elevator pitch can be intimidating.
Definitely. So I got 10. I wrote this out last internship period. I got 10 tips that I feel like have worked really well. And it kind of just flows into like more of a conversation. I hate fake networking. Like, I'd rather just be at home and watch a good TV show. If I'm going to sit here and we just go say, like, yeah, like, I don't know what kind of crap they say. It's a bunch of crap. I don't like it. I like to make genuine connections. And I think that's what we talked about last week, where it's like kind of setting up a schedule for yourself, but also practicing. So one of the things that I always used to do before I get into like my few tips of it, one of the things that I always used to do is like rehearse kind of like what I did and what I wanted to do. And what I mean by that is really talking about like, all right, sitting down with myself and saying, hey, I really want to work in the entertainment industry. So how can I correlate the stuff that I'm doing currently to the entertainment industry? And I would practice this with people that I knew, right? So that's my first part, is I would always practice these things with like friends and things of that nature, or new people that are in my other friend groups who I'm meeting. Practice talking about what I want to do with them first, rather than just that networking setting, because that setting, at least if I'm like out partying or I used to party a lot, so y'all hear me talk about partying. If I was out partying or at a day party, whatever, I would always say that. And because I'm not a really social person. I'm pretty introverted. So I would have my go-to points and my go-to scripts of like things that I would say. So I would say, oh yeah, I do like experiential marketing, and like my goal and my main focus is to create this brand or this company to do these projects with these types of companies, right? Painting them a picture of kind of what I'm interested in doing and what I want to do. And because of that, IL interns can talk to this, but like I really work off of scripts in my head, and things that I continuously say. So in every interview, I say basically the same thing. It might be different a little bit, but that's where I feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable kind of just saying stuff off the top, names and things of that nature that I like to work on. But let's go over the pitching strategies, right? First thing I always like to talk about is being comfortable with yourself and skill set. And when that skill set, what I mean by that skill set is your communication. So what we talked about at the beginning was practicing that in a space that you do feel comfortable, and remembering kind of what you say and the things that make you feel comfortable in that specific setting. And the other part of that is being comfortable with yourself. So understanding like, hey, I just truly need to be myself. And if I'm a little quirky in the way that I talk, that's okay. And it doesn't have to be like self and professionalism, right? There's some aspects of yourself that are there, but you might not want to always bring like overshare too much information when you're trying to be professional, right? Because they don't need to know every single thing. Like you being, let's just say you got a little too lit the last weekend, like that's nothing that you want to share, right? But there are aspects of yourself that you do want to bring in, right? So things that you're interested in, things that mean a lot to you, and maybe TV shows or sports, whatever that might be, bring those into it. If you have like a stamp collection, talk about your stamp collection and why you're passionate about your stamp collection. Like those are the things that you want to bring in, and you're still showing who you are, but you're not hiding it, and you're not having this like corporate version of yourself and then this other version of yourself. The next thing I would talk about is doing your research. So this is where you can make your life so much easier when going into pitching yourself within these networking spaces. If I go and if I'm saying like, oh, I'm meeting with this person, I'm going to look at their LinkedIn and I'm going to look at their Instagram, because that way I can see, do we have any mutual friends or do we have mutual people that we follow? But then in addition to that, I can also see where they might have grown up. When someone has grown up in Minnesota, and we grew up in the same hometown, that's an instant connection, right? That's our first talking point of like, oh yeah, I saw that you grew up in Minnesota, or I saw that you went to the University of Minnesota. Where were you living at? And then I can reminisce, oh, you lived in Dinkytown, and none of y'all are in Minnesota, so y'all don't get any of my references right now. But Dinkytown is like where everybody who went to school in Minnesota, to University of Minnesota, used to hang out. So I can start there, and now I feel comfortable because we're talking about something that makes it easy. Let's say you don't have any of those connections, but you see that maybe they're from, let's just say London, and you travel to London one time. You're like, oh my gosh, I love London. I went to these few things. I'm really passionate about it. I really want to go back. Now you can start to talk a little bit and move that into a travel dialogue, right? And that way you're not starting it off with just pitching yourself. You're starting it off getting to know the person in that space. And that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. That next part is like what I would call is alignment, right? So where do you two align within that? So that might be hometown, that might be travel interest, whatever that might be, that can be your alignment. But then even looking at what is their past job experience as well. If they had a job where you might have known someone or you're interested in, that's where you can start to talk about some of those things. And your goal for all of this is when you're pitching yourself, you always want to make sure that they're talking way more than you're talking. Otherwise, you've lost everything that you need. So if they're sharing a lot, now you can mentally take notes, or you can physically take notes on what they're saying and what they're talking about. So if we're talking about travel and they're talking about like, yeah, even with my job, I travel a lot and things of that nature, that's where, okay, they travel a lot for work. Let me take notes. My follow-up question to that, because now I'm trying to learn about the industry, is, man, I'm really interested in that industry as well. Like with that travel schedule, how do you balance your friendships and work? If you're traveling like 4 days out of the week, how do you balance that? Because that's something that I always hear, but I never really knew like what to do in that situation. They're going to share so much with you after that, because that set up your space for so much more dialogue. And now you don't have to worry about trying to come up with all these questions on the spot or come up with all these questions prior. You can kind of do it as they share a little bit of information with you. Does that all make sense? And then the other thing I would say is make sure that you're picking up on the cues, right? And that ties into like what I was just saying of taking those ideas and translating those into the questions, right? If you notice that, hey, this person is kind of pressed for time, the conversation part of it should be a little bit more brief, and then you should have some of those go-to questions where you might have done your research prior to meeting them. If they're down and they have more time to have a conversation, get to know them, because by getting to know them, you're connecting, you're taking that fakeness out of it, right? And you're creating a real connection. What I don't like to do in first conversation, be like, oh, can you be my mentor, because they work at your dream career? Because that person might not, one, be even meant to mentor you, but two, that's not how a real connection even happens, right? You don't look for a mentor just by meeting them one time and say, hey, can you be my mentor? What you got to do is build a connection. And I see some of your faces be like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. That's why some people might not say they want to be my mentor right away. You got to build a connection. It has to be some type of relationship that you're developing with them to get to that mentorship, right? After you get to know them, you want to make sure, one, yes, they might be in your dream career, but are they even a good person? Some of these people be assholes, like lack of better words, but some of these people you don't really want to be friends with, right? So you want to check in on that first, because that's more important, is, are they a good person? Because if they're a good person and y'all connect, now you have an ally as you're looking to go into your career. And those are the people who are authentically going to say, oh yeah, I can be your reference, or, oh, I know this person, let me actually connect you. Because if you just go off of the big names and you don't go off of the relationship, it's going to be tough for you to look and use them as you move forward into that relationship to help you grow and help you to prosper in your space. And that's just really going to shut down opportunities that you would normally want to achieve and happen for yourself. You're going to get discouraged and you kind of want to leave that behind. The other thing you want to do is reiterate the cues of alignment. So what I mean by reiterate cues of alignment is when you look at like where you two connect and areas that you want to go into, right? Maybe this person is someone who, you know, didn't know what they wanted to do in their career in college and then switched over last minute, and you did the same thing. That's a cue of alignment where you can say, man, I did the same thing and I'm just struggling. And or if you reiterate like where you want to go, right? Like, oh, I want to be an MBA agent, and that person is on their way to becoming an MBA agent, or right now they're like assistant to an agent, right? Those are areas where you can align with them and chat about like the future goals and opportunities that are happening in the that will continue to happen in the future as well. And then also focus in on like those alignment areas and areas that they might be able to help you out as opportunities for kind of what's coming up next or for your next conversation. You never want to just have one conversation with someone. You really want to have about 2 to 3 conversations with them. And that will truly help to get you to that next space of building a relationship and then creating some type of ask as you move forward within that relationship. And then leave with alignment and clear next steps, right? So after you're done having your conversation with them, you want to say, you know what? This was such a great conversation. I know you said you only had 30 minutes. I have like 3 more questions that I wanted to go over, but maybe we can chat about this in the next week or the next 2 weeks, right? Depending on your schedule. And that way you can try to get something on the books and be like, oh, let me look at my schedule, right? And I wouldn't do this. So be mindful of people's time as well. That's one of the things I should put in there, but be mindful of people's time. So if you know that they only have 30 minutes, at 20, 25 minutes, make sure you are doing that follow-up, right? Because that next 5 minutes can be used to get them to commit to that next conversation. Because if you follow up via email, y'all know some of y'all email me, but you see, it takes me a lot of time to communicate. So it might take them a week or a week and a half to get back to you. So it's important to just lock that in prior to the end of the conversation. So you don't want to just spend all of the 30 minutes talking. You want to make sure you're setting up success for yourself to get that next meeting on the books, because then they can say, oh, you know what? I'm going out of town next week, but the week after on Wednesday, I have free time at 4 o'clock. Does that work for you? And you can say, yes, it works, or it doesn't work. So that's an easy way to get everything done as well. And then the last part of that is like establishing what I was just talking about, establishing a timeline and some type of expectation of what the next conversation that you're going into is going to be for. I think one of the things that you can always think about is when pitching yourself, don't only think about this for people who are like super above. So for some of you in the creative industry, that might be account managers. For some of you, that might be a director or a producer, whatever that might be. Do it on your level as well, right? So meet people who are in those industries or even in those internships and develop those relationships with them. Because as you move forward into networking and these other opportunities, you can utilize those people to connect you as well. But you also should work on that, building your relationships. A lot of the people who have really gone to bat for me in the industries or in the spaces that I know are not usually older. They're usually at my level or just maybe like a few levels above me. And those are the people that you really want to focus on building relationships with as well. So even if it is like, maybe there's someone, like maybe your dream is to work in, let's just say the UK, and someone's over there working in that space right now as an intern or working part-time, and you're finishing up with the internship, connect with those type of people, right? But they might have someone that they're connected to and that can help as well. And then as you move forward from building this relationship, so maybe like 2-3 meetings, whatever that might be, that's where you can do an ask, right? So a lot of the times what we do with the podcast and things of that nature is like, hey, as you know, I'm really interested. Let's just say you're interested in going into the film industry and you're talking to someone who's a script writer. As you know, I'm really interested in the film industry. Would love to connect with maybe like 2 other people that you might know. Do you know anyone that you could think of that might be a good connection? And like I said, give that space for the end of your meeting to ask that, because that might lead to 5 to 10 minutes of further discussion. So you don't want to do that at the 30-minute mark, because now they're going to rush to give you the answer. If you do that before, let's say you talk 15 minutes of whatever topic you left off before, and then the next 10 minutes you're talking about like other people in the industry that they might be good connections with. Now you give them time to really sit there and think about it, or scroll on their phone and be like, all right, oh, this person would be good for you. Let me connect you with them right now. And that's what you ultimately want. You want that connection right now, because if they do it later, it's going to be real rush and it might take a lot longer. You might have to wait a month or 2 weeks or whatever it might be. Does that all make sense for everyone? Cool. So I want to reiterate those, because I don't think I reiterated my 10 points. Number 1, being comfy with yourself and your skill set and communication. Number 2, doing your research on the person. Number 3, alignment. So like, where do you all align? Where are your connection points? And then, oh, I missed one. Sorry. Focus on your goals for the meeting. My handwriting is really sloppy, so y'all be patient with me. Number 4 is just develop the relationship. Let them know, learn about who they are, but let them know about who you are as well. And by developing that relationship, they'll leave. They're like, damn, Bryn was a cool person, or Kimia, they're really driven. I see a lot of myself in them, right? That's what you want them to leave with, because that connection is way stronger than me just saying like, oh, we went to the same school. Yeah, that's a lot of people that reach out to other people. But if there's a true connection, that'll take you way further than kind of like the little fakeness stuff that we talked about. Like, school is not fake, but it's a very light connection. And that's really important when you think of that. So that was number 4. And then as you get to the pitch day, have your conversation, pick up on similarities, I always say, things that are like, buzzing, TV shows, whatever. Always make sure you compliment people too. If you start off your conversation with a compliment, people love that. If you're like, oh my gosh, I love like your gallery wall, or I love your hair, or I love your glasses, that's a good start. And then after that, you have your conversation, making sure that they're talking way more than you're talking. If you're talking for the most part of it, you missed out on a lot of connection opportunities. And then pick up on their cues. If they're rushed for time or if they don't have as much time, pick up on that, but also pick up on areas where they have a lot of interest, right? One thing that we always talk about is how can you be valuable to someone else? So a lot of the time, one thing that's going on right now is TikTok. And most older people don't understand TikTok. So if you're in like a marketing or a social media role, they would be like, man, I'm really trying to like at our job, we're really trying to come up with this TikTok strategy and algorithm and like figure out what that means. If you know TikTok, that is something you should be writing down like, oh, this person doesn't know much about TikTok. Let me share with them all these things about TikTok, because that can help you, right? How we talked about setting expectation and going into the next thing you want to achieve or accomplish. That can be your whole next conversation. It's like, oh yeah, I'll give you a whole rundown of how TikTok works and everything. Now you become a valuable asset to that person as well. And that can get you right into the job, right? Or connect you with someone else where it's like, wow, this is great. Like you should actually go work with this person, or you would be a great help in our own company. We should kind of have you on board as an intern or a part-time employee, whatever that might be. So always think about that. And then, like I said, reiterate your cues and alignments where it's talking about TikTok, where talking about something that's happening in the industry. Leave with clear next steps and then establish your timeline. Those are my top 10 things. Cool. Any questions? Right on time, 10 o'clock. Practice this, right? Practice this with your friend group, people that you're comfortable with, and then practice this as you start to network and engage with people. This will help to drive authentic connections because that's ultimately what's going to happen, right?